Rights. And I think a lot of people like that. We don't have to agree on everything we want to do. We don't have to agree on everything that everybody else wants to do. We just need the government, for the most part, to leave us alone unless we're hurting somebody else. I also think that there is a new coalition that's forming, and it's a new coalition that can win elections, and can win elections where Republicans have never won elections or haven't won in 30 some odd years. There's 18 states we haven't won in 30 years. Most of these states have big cities and large African American populations, and we have not tried, we have not showed up. But guess what? The other side's not showing up either, because the Democrats think that these cities are ours and everybody in the big city is going to vote for us, so the Democrats aren't showing up. So what I've been telling people is the way we win the election is we have to become the party of the entire Bill of Rights. Republicans are great on the Second Amendment. I defend the Second Amendment. In fact, I tell you, if you don't believe me, come into my house unannounced and you'll find out about it. The thing is, so do almost every Republican. That's good. We're winning on that issue. But we need to defend the rest of the Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment, you've got to defend if you really want to defend the Second Amendment. The government can't come in your house without permission. While we trust and honor most of our policemen, still the policemen, if they want to come in even a bad person's house, they stop on the curb, they call the judge, and they get a warrant. And you know what? Warrants are almost always given. But the thing is that it's one step. And what it did, and what's important about it is that you prevent bias from occurring. If for some reason the local policeman doesn't like you, there's still going to be one other person they have to call. In the South, there was a time when there was racial bias. There's been bias against other things. There's been bias against whether you're Jewish, whether you're gay, whether you're black, whether you're brown. All kinds of bias can occur. But that's why we separate the power so you can have checks and balances. The Fourth Amendment's a big deal. And what's happening right now is that the government's collecting all of your information all of the time with a warrant that says some guy named Verizon. And I tell them, look, I don't know anybody named Mr. Verizon. And that's not a valid warrant. That's a general warrant. Because it's a warrant that says we can take all of the information from anybody who uses one company. But when we fought the revolution, James Otis fought against writs of assistance. These were things that were warrants, but they're written by soldiers, not by judges. And then they were written in a general fashion such that they could go in anybody's house. It was, John Adams said it was the spark that led to the revolution. This was a big deal for us. But now we got people who only remember the Second Amendment, but remember nothing about the origin of the Fourth Amendment. We're winning some battles, though. The court last week said that it's illegal, that even under the Patriot Act, which I object to, but even if you consider the Patriot Act to be valid, the bulk collection of phone records has gone beyond even what the Patriot Act says. This is a unanimous decision by the appellate court. It is illegal to do what they are doing. And yet, the president goes blithely on doing it. The program was started by executive order. We didn't really start it. We passed the Patriot Act. I didn't vote for it, but the majority of Congress passed it and it was signed into law. But the bulk collection of records was just created by the president. The president just started doing it. And yet when his Privacy Commission says it's an overreach, we should quit doing it, he says, oh, I'll quit when Congress gives me a new plan. But he could stop any time. He could stop tomorrow. He could have stopped a year ago when he was told about this. But the right to privacy brings a lot of people together. I went to Liberty University and gave a speech on privacy, conservative, Jerry Falwell's university, but I also went to Berkeley and gave the same speech. I went to Conservative Political Action Committee, gave the same speech on privacy and the Fourth Amendment, and it is sort of across party lines accepted by people. If we can get through and win a Republican primary, there'll be many independents that will come to a message like this that isn't a traditional, just a Republican message, and hasn't been touted really by either side very well. But I've been thinking and talking about the war on drugs for the last year or so, maybe a little bit longer. I always had my suspicions that we were doing too much, that the gentleman I heard about today, Mazinski's in jail for life in your state for a marijuana crime. And it's like, who can think, he's been in jail 21 years, that it wouldn't be appropriate to give the guy a second chance? That's crazy. But the thing is that as I got to looking at the war on drugs, I read a book by Michelle Alexander where she talks about mass incarceration, the new Jim Crow. And the thing about it is that I wasn't aware how many people were in prison who were black or brown, and that there was a disproportionate amount. What do I mean by that? If you do a survey and you ask how many kids are doing drugs, let's say 15 to 25, it's about the same, white or black. But the black population is like 10% of the population. How did they get to be 75 or 80% of the population in jail for drugs? Hispanic, same way. Some say, oh, it's just bias and racism. There's probably some of that, but I think more than that, it's that poverty, there's a higher percentage of African Americans, live closer together and there's more crime. So when the police go on patrol, they're more likely not to be in the suburbs because there's just not as much crime and people live farther apart. But time after time, if you keep going to the same poor community where there's crime, people are smoking pot. They're smoking pot in other places too, but you just happen to keep rounding up the same poor people. And so we have whole communities decimated. I think in Ferguson they said for every 100 black women, there are 60 black men. And if we're the Republican Party that says we're the family values party, that means you want dads around. If we're the family values party that says we want people to work and we're not for welfare forever, try getting a job if you have a felony conviction.
Right.
The other thing I learned about as I heard about this is that, for example, you go to jail for a felony, you're in jail for 3 years and you have kids and you're not married, you owe child support. What if you get out and you owe $3,000? Now you have a felony conviction, your best job is going to be $7.25 an hour. You're never getting $3,000. You're never going to see that in your whole life probably. And what do? We put you back in jail for non-payment of your child support payment. That doesn't sound like family values to me. The last case I'll end with is the Fifth and Sixth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says you get due process. The government shouldn't take your property without due process. It means you get a trial, you get a lawyer, you get all this representation. Right now we're doing something through civil asset forfeiture where if you're riding down the street, the government can just take your stuff and you have to prove that it was yours. And they usually kind of say, well, if you'll sign this piece of paper, we'll let you keep half of it. That doesn't sound like justice to me. We should only take stuff from people with a conviction. There's no reason a person accused of crime should ever have anything permanently taken from them. The Sixth Amendment says you get the right to a trial. Trial by jury, you get a representation. It also says you get a speedy trial. There was a story in the New Yorker magazine a couple of months of a young black kid in the Bronx, Khalif Browder. He's 16. He's arrested for a crime. I don't know if he committed the crime or not. That's for the courts to sort out. But he's put in Rikers Island for 3 years without a trial. Solitary confinement for much of it. He tried to commit suicide. And what I ask a lot of people in this room, myself included, who haven't had to live that kind of hard life, and I'm not excusing what he did or didn't do, but my kid would have gotten out of jail. Your kid would have gotten out of jail. $3,000 bond and they didn't have it. So when you see people unhappy in our big cities, there's no excuse for rioting, but when you see people unhappy, understand that some of them might be unhappy because somebody they knew was in jail for 3 years without a trial. And that, I think, is ultimately the crux. If we think we're going to be able to, it's the right thing to do, but think of all the new people who are going to listen to us if we respect and champion the Sixth Amendment as much as we do the Second Amendment. When that happens, we're going to be the dominant party and all kinds of new people are going to come to us. We're going to win in a landslide and do great things for this country. I want to be part of it, and I hope you do too. Thank you.